So yeah, hit it.
Now, Joe Shoulak, two words that are synonymous with quality, artistry, and infographics. I'm an expert over the last 2 decades I've been following Joe's work, and I just want to show some of his earlier work. A lot of you people are probably familiar with his later graphics, his locator graphics, which were amazing. But his earlier work shows the influences that were eventually a big part of his later infographic locator maps. So I guess I'll show you some of his earliest work. 1968, this was the first horse that Joe ever drew. But what I thought was amazing about this piece is that there's a subtle image underneath this, I think, which represents Joe's sense of how things change quickly. I think there used to be another horse, now there's this horse, and then there will be another horse after that. I think it just tells you how permanence is not something that's in life. Things constantly change. So this is Joe's earliest work, and I think that's probably very sophisticated. He was probably about three years old at that point. Okay, we go to the next one. The next piece is 1968 also, and this was the I guess a collie, but what it ended up looking more like was a two-headed cow. And I think this was Joe's first comment on stem cells. I think this is years before anyone else was taking stands on stem cells. I don't even think stem cells were invented yet at that point. And Joe, this was his first political work, and he took a real risky chance saying something at that age. He was, I think, 4 in 1968. And so that's another piece of work that he's done. After that, a little bit later, this is 1975, this is his Gerald Ford. What he did was he took I think everyone knows that George Washington's teeth were made of wood, and I think he took that concept and then did a drawing of Gerald Ford in which his whole face was made of wood, which was, I think, a pretty gutsy statement to make at the time, and really made you think of George Washington and Gerald Ford at the same time. Another piece, this is a period where Joe was doing several pieces in which he put famous politicians on cards. And this is Henry Kissinger, I assume. This is from 1976. Once again, a piece very affected by Watergate, I believe, because Ford was certainly famous for pardoning Nixon. This is Joe's first political satire, I believe, and I think it was very subtle. A lot of people didn't realize that Joe was calling Henry Kissinger a joker at the time. But if you really look at it for longer than 5 minutes, you realize that this is calling Henry Kissinger a joker by putting him on a joker card. Another Watergate influence piece is this Richard Nixon, which is once again, this is another in the series of joker cards. I think in this case, once again, I think he was saying that Richard Nixon was a joker. And if you notice, this is the first work that Joe actually wrote something in other than just the J, the politician. So in case people didn't know that Richard Nixon was a politician, he put this here so people would know that. A lot of editorial cartoons use this style where if they're not drawn well enough or if they're not written well enough, they will put labels so you'll know what the heck they mean. And this was the first time Joe had taken that chance and went out and did that. Another thing you'll notice in all of Joe's early work is there's north symbols on all of them. So you always know the horse or the two-headed cow or Gerald Ford or Richard Nixon. You know which way they're facing and you know where the equator is. I think that's an important thing that he used early on. And probably his finest piece was Joe Namath of the Jets. I would assume this is 1973 when the Jets were successful and Joe Namath was probably at his height. I think the most amazing thing about this is that Joe Namath looks like he's almost going to faint. I think the way his hand is held, instead of it being a macho take on Joe Namath, I think he's almost feminizing Joe Namath and making it seem like he's about to faint, like almost like a 72-year-old grandmother is just putting her hand up to his face, almost like, oh, you know, she's scared. I think he's using that. I think at that time his grandmother was very ill, and he did this as a tribute to his grandmother, but disguised it so she wouldn't know it was about her illness, and made it into Joe Namath. But once again, you see the personal stuff behind the work of Joe Shoulak.